Hey everyone, and welcome back to Sunspot. I just had a beautiful day up in Ojai, California. I was sitting with the Love Surf Remember Foundation, which is Ram Dass's foundation, and they have a monthly kirtan and prasad, and just a beautiful, loving gathering there up at Raghu Marcus's abode. And it was such a deeply loving and beautiful gathering. I just was blown away. This was my first time going, and we did some arti, a couple Hanuman chalisas, some chalisas for the Divine Mother, and we had some delicious food. And there were just a lot of these really deeply loving souls, and a few people there had sat with Maharaji himself, and I think connecting to that lineage in person was just such a heart opening and mind opening experience. There was this story that someone shared. They had just come back from India and they were going around getting some blessings from some elders about a book that they're going to publish soon. And he was asking advice, and this one elder, in a very, of course, cosmic rascal way, said, "Oh, I don't have any advice for you." But upon sitting with him for a little while, he said, "Okay, you know what I actually do?" And his advice was just to remember. And that just permeated my being, and it was like, a sound of Om that just resonated with me and rippled off into infinity. I think at the core of my practice and any spiritual practice, it's about remembering. It gave me just so much to soak in and think about today, and I just wanted to transfer some of that love and that download over to you guys. The remembrance is such a huge part of this whole thing. That's all it is, right? If you have any sort of spiritual practice, it could be song, it could be chanting, it could be playing an instrument, it could be going to temple, meditating, yoga, it could be writing. I mean, whatever your medium is of connecting, and whether that's worshiping God or the universe, or that's worshiping the divinity within yourself, or just a devotional practice to yourself. It's about remembering our truest essence, remembering why we're here, remembering to be a vessel of love and service to others. And without that, we're lost back in our own sort of samsara and suffering, and we're we're thrown back into the earthly world, the worldly world, where the mission doesn't become about service and doesn't become about reminding each other to remember. But in that worldly world, the mission often becomes distracting and materialistic and sort of void of heart. Ram Dass, who was, of course, a huge part of today's gathering in spirit and philosophically and in essence, and his photo was everywhere in the home and in the worship space. And we were talking about Ram Dass a lot. We were really remembering him and thinking about him, talk about remembrance. And he talks about heart to heart resuscitation and how we absolutely need this to survive. Without it, we starve. We cannot live without an open heart, and we can live in a worldly way, but we can't live and remember our truest essence if we close our heart down. And the world we live in, and especially in the United States and the West, we've created such a culture. Oh wow, an avocado just plopped right down off the tree. That is too funny. We live, I love that. We live in such a culture now where the price of keeping your heart open is so frightening and seemingly dire. if you keep your heart open, then you have to be connected and aware of the suffering in the world and around us. And in the West, we seem to not have a lot of third spaces and spaces that are full of community and guidance from elders. We've lost touch with that. And so the price of keeping your heart open is very high, seemingly. And we've really created a culture where we've discouraged staying open to the world of suffering. And in that way, it's not even just the global scale, it's our own heart space, our own essence we close down to, and the essence of other humans. It's like, what if I were to remain open throughout this roller coaster of life? And I think for a lot of us, we immediately think, well, I'm going to be so hurt. I'm going to be heartbroken. I'm going to be grieving. I'm going to be devastated. And so we close our hearts down, but we start to die of this sort of spiritual dehydration. The system that actually exists within us, the one we're here to remember, cannot exist and sustain itself off of just this worldly existence that's dry and void of heart to heart resuscitation. And I love that term so much because when you live with that open heart and you either connect with someone who has an open heart in that same way, or your open heart becomes a reminder of that remembrance to stay vulnerable, to clear your mind and open your heart. If you can be a reminder of that remembrance to others, then their heart flowers and you have that heart to heart resuscitation, and you are suddenly, the plant has been watered, this divine plant within us. And that ability to do that is the antidote for this worldly experience that we're having, this roller coaster of life. I think that's what we're being asked to remember, right? That we're here to stay vulnerable for these experiences. That's why we decided to incarnate. And if you don't believe in that, well, that's okay. But you have to agree that's a huge part of being human, is staying vulnerable, staying open, staying awake, staying aware. Because without that, then both the joy and the suffering loses a lot of its meaning, and they no longer become reminders or vehicles of remembrance. And what are we remembering? I mean, we're remembering our true essence, our personal divinity, the the divine mother, the divine father, the yin and the yang, the feminine and the masculine, that merger that's existent and capable within us and existent, you know, without us and outside of us. That's what, we're remembering, this essence that is of God or the universe or divinity, however you choose to phrase that, that is in all beings and all living things. And we're here to walk each other home. To also quote Ram Dass, and the remembrance. How do we do this in other ways? I mean, it's through the practice. It's allowing all of those things around us as we stay in that open heart to be the sacred sound that brings us back home, like the sound of Om, like the meditation bell, like the chanting, like those are all vehicles to come right back to now, this present moment. So even if you don't have a spiritual life that involves the idea of God, or maybe a more something that feels or looks like religion to you, or feels or looks like something that's God focused, even if you don't have that, you can also see that it's about being here in the moment. And that's also the remembrance, is living from the now. I was sitting there in our ceremony today and during kirtan, and I could see the mind wander and want to be in moments elsewhere. And then you realize, well, there's nowhere to go. I will, I'll later in a later moment be exactly where I am now. That doesn't make any sense. It's such a funny thought. And so the worldly self is constantly on this path and almost this addiction of escape. Like, oh, let me get to the next thing. Let me get to the next space. Let me do something that takes me outside of now. But we're also in that funny way chasing things and experiences that bring us to the now. Like the thing that becomes the escape was also the thing that brought us into the moment, right? And I can think of some of the obvious ones that become addiction points for people, like sex or love or drugs. But even you know, the workout routine, the yoga class, your diet, your friend who you love and talk to all day, all the time, um, you know, those things can still become a way when we're not feeling well or we're feeling like we don't want to be in the moment. Those things can be a way that we get out of the moment and we don't take the time to just pull in all the pieces of who we are and our day and digest them. There was this thing that came out of my mouth the other day, and then I was like, oh, that's a good phrase. It's just like less information and more integration. And so all those things that I mentioned before, I mean, they can be good, they can be bad, and they can actually be the thing that brings us into the moment. That amazing workout, the amazing meal, the experience you have of socializing, even of love, of sex. I mean, even drugs, right? You talk about psychedelic experiences, like they can be the things that are vehicles into presence, but they can also be the things that are vehicles out of presence. And it's kind of biphasic. It's like you have to see when something switches over to pulling you out of the moment. And so when I was sitting there in Kirtan today, I was watching my mind wander in certain moments. But then when you're doing something like that, and there's so much presence and so much love and so much lineage and wisdom in that room, in that space, and really love, it's like with that open heart, you just come back to the now because you realize, where else am I going to go? There's nothing better than this, honestly. There's nothing better than just being in love and hanging out with fellow souls and not being in love with a person, but being in love as a state of being, as a state of existence. And I know you know what that feels like. You're watching this video for a reason. You're connecting with my content for a reason, because that's what a lot of this content is about. And so I am here to tell you today to remember. I was told today and reminded today to remember. And may we remember every single day of our lives. May we be that reminder to each other, to ourselves. And when we remember and we come back into the moment, then we can also be of service and we can show up for those in our lives, whether we're close to them or we don't know them at all. We can remember ourselves to help one another on this roller coaster of life when we see somebody who's lost, when we see ourselves in others, because I know we all, even when we're not lost, have been in a space where we felt lost before. And so if we do the work to remember, then we can really be of service to other humans and we can be a space of love, remembrance, and service for other beings. And I think that's why we're here. You don't even have to be a spiritual person to feel that. I think if you've had any sort of experience that mirrors anything that I'm talking about, you'll know that that's our true essence. And that's what we're here to remember. I really want to take this time to say thank you for the following. We just hit 50 followers, which, on a grand scale, you could say, oh, it doesn't seem like a lot. But if I had 50 people in my home right now, I would realize, wow, this is a lot of people. And so I always sort of remind myself, every follower, every person who interacts with my videos is someone I'm grateful for, whether you like it or not. That's okay. You can stay, you can leave, but I'm thankful that you took the time to interact. And I'm thankful that there are people engaging. And I know this message will find the right people. And I know that the right people will share what they think, share what they feel. They'll subscribe, they'll like, they'll comment, and do all of the things. And if you do choose to do those things, thank you again from the bottom of my heart. It means everything. And I hope one day to turn this into something so much more: gatherings, retreats, online teaching, beyond what this already is. So please share it, pass it along, and just remember to remember and remind others as well. And just be a vehicle for that remembrance for those in your life. And I will see you guys on the next one.